It's Alex. We're putting new brake shoes and sorting out the seized adjuster on the P4 today. Impact driver here, so we can smash in and turn the screw. Look at that. Spot on. He looks very chuffed with himself there. He knew that would work. Is that where you found it? You've just done one you've already loosened. We'll take these 3 screws out and the drum should slide off, we hope. Do it on the other side. Yay! There you go. I'll go through the removal of the shoes and that on the other side when I do that. But one thing to note is to get a cable tie ready to keep these in. You don't want them popping out because you risk fluid coming out. The adjuster goes through this hole and it was all seized up. We couldn't adjust the brakes. So we've removed these 2 bolts from the back and then tapped it out with a hammer from the back. And we've got it over here on the vise. Here's the adjuster in the vise. That's the bit that sticks out the back of the back plate that you turn to adjust these in and out, to adjust the brake shoes. But it's seized in there. So we sprayed it with oil and we're going to have a go at turning it on the vise. I've got Tom helping again today. Something's moving. Lyndon's in the background sanding an MG. Oh, that's moving now, isn't it? Much better. Oh, Lyndon's straining in the back there. Look at that. Much nicer. And to think I nearly bought a new one of those. No need. You deserve a cup of tea. Definitely.
Deserves a cup of tea before he got here.
Right, here's a mistake not to make if you're doing the brakes.
Come to a workshop with Alex.
There's my dad. Yes, he's not being Mr. Ratchet Hands today. He's being, although you were ratcheting your Mercedes out there. Yeah, mistake not to make is when you do the shoes, these little adjusters might fall out, or they probably will fall out. There's actually a top and a bottom. They've got a very slight chamfer, which is a new word I've learnt today. So try and catch the bottom one when it falls out, and remember it's from the bottom, and put it back where it came from, because we had them upside down and we couldn't get the drum on because they weren't fully sort of sat together. So definitely do not make that mistake. So we've been, oh yeah, let's have the light over here. We've been struggling. There you go, that's what Tom's words are. So we found out the handbrake was not backing off as it should, not behaving as it should. So the handbrake mechanism, this rod pulls, and when it pulls this little fella here, it then pushes these out, and when these get pushed out, it pushes the shoe out to hold on the drum. That's what makes the handbrake work. Now we've got one piece out somewhere. Here it is. I've got this piece out with the little sort of ball bearing thing, which is this roller, I don't know what you call it. But this side is completely seized. It's not moving at all. None of this None of this is moving. So we've got to try and free it off, which should be fun. The actual wheel cylinder hydraulic side of things are working perfect. They're fine. But yeah, that's seized. So I'm going to clean these little fellas up. Can't see them very well, but it's the little balls. They're not balls, they're like... Sorry, my dad's voice is really loud. Sorry, Dad. Yeah, clean the little balls. Clean this out. This has all got, you know, rust in it, you can see.
It's like standing there with his cape and everything like that. So they come and have a look at it, they lift it up the back bit inside, and the chassis, the body of the battlefield was just sitting on styrofoam on top of the chassis. Right? And it had got so old, because it's 20 years old, that was degrading, and the body was just collapsing down. So he goes, yeah, we'll sort that out. He got this.
All the moving parts. All my clean discs in here.
I couldn't believe it. And the whole time he was in character. You see him jumping out the car like that. Like, seriously, dude, you deranged.
I mean, you might set off do the mechanical on this sort of old stuff, but more often than not, it's bodywork problems rather than mechanical problems. They come with it.
Yeah, well, I don't mind doing the welding, but
Yeah, you don't have welding without thinking.
but
What's it going to look like being painted over that?
Now, which way round does it
Well,
go?
that's just going to stick out like a sore thumb.
Goes that way, doesn't it? So this one's got to go that way round.
I can give you a dongle, did I? No, I really
Yeah, and that's why another reason I don't get involved.
And then you got this plate. Make sure it's clean.
I don't have the patience or the knack.
And it's got two little notches there.
You won't see it.
And then you've got 4 screws that go in there.
But I mean, to be fair to good collectors, that's painting the filler.
Right, something to watch with these shoes. There's an actual top and a bottom shoe, and you've got to make sure you've got the right one in the right place. So what we've done is taken the old shoes off as a whole, and we've marked them so we know this was the top one, and we've scratched the holes so we know which hole the springs go into. So there's 2 springs, one that way round and one that way round. And you've got the leading shoe. Just make sure that they match. Make sure the actual lining is in the right place. Because if it's not in the right place, it's not going to work properly. And then what we'll do is we'll mark the right hole that it's going to go in for the springs. And probably mark top again so we know that's the top one. And we have got these little pins in these new shoes. We might see if we can remove those because we don't need them because they're not on these. If I put this bottom shoe on the top, you can then see what I mean. Can you see the linings aren't matching up? That's because that's the bottom one. The trailing one, the bottom one's the trailing one. The top one's the leading.
Well, no, you've got a you've got a leading edge on both. Yeah?
Okay.
Direction of rotation. Yeah.
Okay.
So when you're going forward, yeah, then the wheel's going that way. And
Yeah.
so that is the leading edge.
That's the leading edge.
Yeah, and on the top one.
Okay.
And that's the leading edge.
On the bottom one. Right, okay, yeah, that's confusing. To the likes of me, anyway. So this would be the trailing edge. It's not a trailing shoe, it's a trailing edge.
That's it.
Okay. There you go, you've learnt something new. So have I. Right, we've decided we're going to knock the pins out of the new shoes, just to be sure, because the old ones didn't have them. We don't want them to get in the way. See how easy that was? So socket in the vise and then just knock it through, so that way you're not going to damage the lining of the shoe by leaning it on anything and hammering it. So the new shoes are on. I was going to film us doing it, but you wouldn't have seen much apart from us grunting and struggling and saying watch your fingers a lot. So how we did it was we put the top, well, we linked the two shoes together with the springs first on the bench. That's how they go, like that. Get them in the right holes. Then we put the top shoe in first into the adjuster. So the top one, just we hooked that on to the adjuster. Then Tom kept an eye on this side for me to keep this spring in place, because that spring liked to keep popping out. And then I used a pry bar or a very long screwdriver like this. So I had it resting against that hub and on the edge of the shoe to get the spring to move. I won't do it because I don't want it to fall out. But you lever down that stretches, sorry about the racket, that stretches the spring, and you're able to hook it into this adjuster, which is a bit awkward because it likes to spin around in there and fall out. But that slots into there. And then once that side's in, we then struggled and did it again with the pry bar, which is a bit awkward because I'm left-handed and I'm showing you my right hand. There's a little edge of the shoe there, and you can take the pressure off the spring and lift it over. So then it's got to go into this cylinder, and it's got to rest on the edge of this handbrake mechanism. So you have to sort of give the shoe a whack there to get it to line up with it. Same down here, this was the last one we put in. And then all we got to do is get a bit of sandpaper, scuff up the shoe to make sure we haven't got any greasy fingerprints on there. A bit of brake cleaner or something. And hopefully the drum will slide on. So this is about, I don't know, oh, it's a 40 grit this. Just got to give it a quick scuff, get rid of any fingerprints, and then the leading edge, I'm going to do all four, but you can just, it's called chamfer, so you just sort of take, can you see what I'm doing? Taking that edge off of that. Doesn't have to be too mad, but the Rover manual said to do it, so I'm doing it. Once you've done that, I'll just get a nice clean brush or an airline just to get rid of all the dust that you created. The brake drum slid on nice and easy like it should, and then you've got 3 screws to put in to do it up. You have to make sure that all the holes line up before you put it on, and then with a hammer just give it a tap, make sure it's seated properly, and then you can give those screws a good old doing up. Yeah, so drum's on, we've hammered it on, we've screwed it on. So to adjust it, there's the adjuster on the back. Turn it that way to do it up, basically like you're doing up a bolt, and do it up until it won't turn anymore. You'll know. And so if it doesn't turn at all, you then back it off one turn. And when I say back it off, you'll feel it. You'll back it off and it'll sort of go clunk, like there's a one sort of cog almost. And then you'll find probably that you can turn it by hand then. And the other thing that Tom said to do was, once we've done that, is stamp on the brakes to make sure everything lines up, and then spin it again just to make sure nothing's catching and everything's sort of settled into place. And I think that's it now. What we got to do now is try and get the handbrake to work, which will be fun. Now I always put a bit of copper slip on the mating surface around the hub, and I actually put copper slip on the wheel studs as well, or the wheel bolts. And I want to know your comments as to what you should and shouldn't do, because I was always taught to grease the wheel studs, but in my job they specifically say not to grease the wheel bolts or wheel studs. So I'm interested to know what you think. Both rear brakes are adjusted now. So the next thing we've done it now. I didn't put it on film. The reason I haven't filmed us actually doing a lot of this is, one, there's no room to get the camera in, and two, I forgot to put the camera on charge. Sorry. So the handbrake's been adjusted now, and how you adjust it is quite easy. You go under here. Right. This is the box. Hang on, let me put a light on. Why am I in darkness? Here we go. This box has two bolts either side, and it lives up here because there's the threads that the bolts go into. So the box sits over this. This is the handbrake mechanism. And how you adjust it is back here, and I'll show you when I've got the ramp up. This is the adjuster nut. You know, you undo that. Well, we undid that fully whilst we were messing about with the back brakes, and then we did it back up again once we set the back brakes up. And you keep winding that in until you've got the right amount of clicks. So I've now got 3 clicks. 3 clicks brings a handbrake on full. Rover manual says between 1 and 2 clicks, and I just think that's a bit too close for my liking. So 3 clicks makes me happy, makes Tom happy, and it works. And that, I need to put a lock nut, just a lock nut on there, just to stop this coming undone and adjusting itself again. Here we are under the ramp, and this is all the mechanism here.
You don't need me for anything else, really, do you?
Looks complicated, but it's all right. There's my new gator I put on the other day, look. Perfect. I'm going to voice over here. I'm going to be mum. Always bend your knees when lifting. Right? Because that wheel's heavy. Always start the wheel nuts off by hand so you can feel the thread. Make sure it's not cross-threading. And never go mad with these electric things. Just one little sort of, sort of gone tight. Don't keep going. Always use a torque wrench. The brakes are done now. They'll just need a test drive and make sure that they're not binding really. And plumes of smoke coming out from behind me. While I'm under here, I've noticed there is an oil leak. It's not a drippy oil leak. It doesn't leave any drips on the floor, but it has made it all oily underneath. But it doesn't use any engine oil, and it doesn't use any gearbox oil. Now I followed the leak up, and it looks like the steering box must be leaking because that's all oily up there. I don't know. I'll have to check the level in the steering box, I think. But I'm going to go change the oil first. And there's a sump plug. We're going to pop that out, drain the oil. And there's the... oh, sorry. There's the filter, which undoes from above, annoyingly. Aha, the P4's one and only grease nipple. Just keep pumping it full of grease until you can see it all coming out in here. Probably a bit too much, really. It's all going to flick out and coat the underside of the vehicle like it's done previously. Ugh. Tom's gone home. The wheels are back on the wagon, and all I've got to do is put oil back in it. So thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll do a better video next time when I've actually got battery on my camera.